Everything that can be liquidated and put into Bitcoin is being liquidated and put into Bitcoin. That means that it's demonetizing all fiat money, obviously, but that's not a hard thing to do because all fiat money eventually goes to zero. That's the history of fiat money. They've all gone to zero or lost 99% of their purchasing power. None has ever escaped that fate. The average lifespan of fiat money is roughly 27 years, and the US dollar will not escape that fate either. If you have $10 worth of Bitcoin or a few $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, it's kind of the same thing. Michael Saylor has billions and billions of Bitcoin. He can't affect Bitcoin. He can't change Bitcoin. He has no impact on Bitcoin because that's the inevitable path of one who hodls Bitcoin for any length of time, is that you realize that this kind of, it gets rid of money in a lot of ways.
오늘 암호화폐 시장이 급락하면서 비트코인은 10만 달러까지 하락했습니다. 일론 머스크 같은 억만장자들은 향후 몇 주 안에 더 큰 폭락이 올 수 있다며 경고의 신호를 보냈습니다. 하지만 맥스카이저는 모든 비트코인 및 암호화폐 보유자들에게 또 다른 경고를 전했습니다. 지금의 매도세는 시작에 불과하다는 것입니다. 그가 말하길 다가오는 비트코인 쓰나미는 암호화폐 시장을 영원히 바꿔놓을 것이라고 합니다. 카이저는 우리가 알고 있는 법정화폐 시스템의 붕괴가 불가피하다고 주장하며 비트코인과 암호화폐 시장을 장악하려는 그 계획이 진행 중이라고 경고했습니다. 블랙록 같은 거대 기관이 비트코인 시장에 진입하면서 이제는 국가 단위로 비트코인에 뛰어드는 상황이기 때문에 그것조차도 더 이상 큰 이슈가 아닙니다. 현재 비트코인 가격은 약 10만 6,600달러 아래 수준으로 지난 한 달 동안 거의 13% 하락한 상태입니다. 이번 최신 인터뷰에서 맥스카이저는 지금이 그 어느 때보다도 중요한 시점이라고 강조했습니다. 그는 각국이 비트코인을 채택하고 글로벌 경제체제에 통합해야 한다고 주장합니다. 지금 우리가 알고 있는 기존 화폐 시스템이 붕괴되기 전에 말이죠. 모두가 관세, 인플레이션, 그리고 약한 달러에만 집중하고 있지만 맥스카이저는 전혀 다른 현상을 보고 있습니다. 그것은 2025년 가장 과소평가된 경제 변화일지도 모릅니다. 그는 미국이 최근 비공식적으로 현대 역사상 가장 큰 기업 세금 감면을 실행했다고 지적합니다. 놀랍게도 공식 세율은 전혀 바꾸지 않고서요. 새로운 감가상각 규정 덕분에 이제 기업들은 거의 모든 자산을 비용으로 처리할 수 있게 되었습니다. 이로 인해 실질 법인세율이 약 10에서 12% 수준으로 떨어졌습니다. 즉 미국은 세계 주요 선진국 중 가장 낮은 세율을 가진 경제가 된 셈입니다. 이제 맥스카이저가 향후 몇 달간의 비트코인 전망에 대해 이야기한 최신 인터뷰로 들어가 보겠습니다. 그는 곧 엄청난 자본이 비트코인 시장으로 유입될 것이라고 전망합니다.
It's currently the world reserve currency. There's a lot of interesting things to talk about the US dollar and how that relates to stable coins and how that plays out globally. That's an interesting topic. But the dollar itself cannot escape losing another 90% of its purchasing power as it's already lost for the same reasons that all fiat money ends up going to zero, and that is that the countries that sponsor them engage in a debt spiral. They borrow too much. They can't pay their debt. Now the interest on the debt for the American dollar is the single biggest item on America's budget. It's bigger than the Pentagon. It's bigger than the military. Is the interest on our debt. So it's not that we can't afford to pay the debt. We can't afford to pay the interest on the debt. That's called a debt spiral, and it always ends the same way. And we're seeing in what's called the stablecoin market is an attempt to stave off the inevitable collapse of the US dollar. It'll just prolong the agony of having an unstable, worthless fiat money. And we see already what's happening in the gold market. The gold market has woken up to this. After being kind of asleep for a while, for a few years, it's now hitting new all-time highs, over 3,000. Gold will go to $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 an ounce. Bitcoin is $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million, $5 million a coin, right? That's the path that Bitcoin is on. Everything that can be liquidated and put into Bitcoin will be liquidated and put into Bitcoin because everything goes to zero against Bitcoin because Bitcoin is the best money that we've ever had as humans. And humans are compelled to seek the best possible money. And Bitcoin is perfect money. It's absolute scarcity meets infinite demand. You know, I started buying Bitcoin, I was already in my 50s. So I'm kind of set in my ways. A lot of people say, well, you're worth a lot of money. You know, what do you do? And I'm saying, nothing. I don't do anything because I figured out life a long time ago when I was living in Paris for $300 a month. Our sense of well-being transcends materialism completely and utterly. And everyone everywhere is essentially hooked into the Satoshi economy. So I would say that there's never a bad day to buy Bitcoin. buy Bitcoin, hodl Bitcoin, own Bitcoin, and experience the satisfaction that comes with owning Bitcoin, and join the Bitcoin community and start to change the way you think as much as change your wealth status or what you think about your net worth or your economic place in society. The way to enter that realm is by owning Bitcoin. I mean, I've been around since 2010, and I've seen there's over 2 million of these altcoins that have been created. They're all bad. They're all bad, and they all go to zero against Bitcoin, and that's provable. Some slowly, some quickly. Ether took a while, but now it's collapsing to zero against Bitcoin. Cardano will go to zero against Bitcoin. They all go to zero against Bitcoin. They are all essentially like numbers on a roulette wheel. They have nothing to do with money per se. They're all, to some degree, centralized, either relatively or absolutely, when compared to Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is the only truly decentralized project of any of them. So it's unique in that way. It shares a uniqueness, and that none of these other projects share that uniqueness, right? So they're just knockoffs, and there's an attempt to recreate the magic of Bitcoin thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times, and none have been successful.
So are these scams, or do
scams.
people have good intentions,
No,
though?
they're scams.
So the people
They're
that
all
make
scams.
it know this.
Definitely. I mean, in the case of, let's say, Ethereum, I mean, they pre-mined something like 70% of the float, and then they just dump it. They're just scamming. They're just dumping. They create some media publicity and they dump it. XRP, it's all pre-mined. So Brad Garlinghouse will go, we've got deals, and he'll go on TV, and there'll be a little bump in the price. He dumps it. He's a seller. None of them are buyers. None of them who have created any of these projects are buyers. They've never bought it. They're all sellers. They just sell. They're not, because they're all scams, 100% scams. I can say that unequivocally without any compunction whatsoever. They are 100% scams, have been, always will be, and they should avoid them. There's nothing redeeming about them whatsoever. I say that Coinbase in California is not only selling unregistered securities, but they are an unlicensed casino. They are an unlicensed casino. You cannot operate a casino license that's not available in California. Coinbase should move to Nevada and get a proper casino license and operate as a casino, because that's what they are. It's just a casino. And they also sell unregistered securities, which are also the problem with all unregistered securities. Now, there's been some regulatory back and forth on that, and because the SEC, of course, is late to the game, and they try to catch up, and some projects got grandfathered or didn't get grandfathered, but they're all essentially unregistered securities. Ether, even though they, according to the latest SEC mandate or ruling, they're suggesting that they are not an unregistered security. However, as a registered stockbroker myself, who worked on Wall Street for many years as a securities dealer and broker, I can tell you without equivocation that Ether is an unregistered security, as is XRP.
Embracing an unyielding enthusiasm for the crypto realm, Kaiser confidently predicts that the next collapse is looming on the horizon, as BlackRock and many other crypto giants are bracing for. Kaiser reassures that a long-expected surge awaits, as Bitcoin's price will still rise exponentially in the second half of 2025.
You're selling with the expectation of profit, and there's absolutely no it doesn't pass the smell test when it comes to the Howey test, which is the test used to determine whether something is a security or not. Then none of them are eligible to be outside of that law, and but they play games and they try to influence regulators, right? I mean, I worked on Wall Street for many years, and the regulators are not hard to lobby, right? They get subject by lobbyists, and laws are created because they get lobbied by banks, right? Wall Street's one of the biggest lobbyist component in Washington. I know this very well, having worked in the industry myself for many years. Like the biggest, most egregious violation of this was when Citigroup bought Travelers Insurance, because according to Glass-Steagall, which is part of the Securities Act of 33 and 34, you cannot mix a broker and a bank or an insurance company. They're supposed to be separated. But the Citibank went ahead, Sandy Weil went ahead and bought, and then they retroactively passed a law breaking up Glass-Steagall. I'm 65, so I'm the last of the boomers. I'm actually a boomer.
You guys get blamed for everything.
I mean,
is it your fault?
Get blamed. Well, we consumed everything, and we financialized everything, and we ran the prices up incredibly, and we cashed in. Like it was in my year when I entered Wall Street in 1982. It had been in a bear market for 16 years. guys in the office were working night jobs to make the rent. You couldn't make a living as a stockbroker. And the Dow Jones had tried to get over 1,000 for 16 years. Okay, now it's at 40, 50,000, right, on the Dow Jones. And so we came in the class of 1982. It's my first job out of college, 22 years old. Bull market started almost on that day. And so for 42 years, up until 2022, when the bond market effectively ended the rally, which started under Reagan in 1980. So you had 42 years of a bond bull market. And that's my adult life, was riding the bull market in that very compressed special period of time where I like to say it sometimes, I've never worked for a living. Because when I started on Wall Street, it's like the money spigots just opened up and started flooding Wall Street. And I went from making $6,000 as a proofreader at a rubber stamp factory in 1982. And then my first year on Wall Street, I made the equivalent in current dollars of like 1.2 million bucks. And
annually?
Never looked back.
This was annually.
Yeah. And I never looked back. I mean, it was ridiculously easy. And that's been, I think the boomers have had that experience. It's been so easy that you could, it'd be very difficult not to be a super successful, in America at that time. I mean, we were the only surviving, country with their industrial infrastructure. The U.S. dollar is world reserve currency. It's just everyone pays reparations through the dollar to America every single day. That's going to end at some point soon, I believe. Our taxes it's a charade because it's only $3 trillion a year collected in taxes, and it's a $2 quadrillion global derivatives market, right? The banks, by lending out trillions of U.S. dollars every single day. I'll tell you, if you're interested in to look at this globally and see where we're at, and what the pin the pin that's going to be pulled to implode and explode the global Ponzi scheme. You just look at what's happening in Japan, because the Japanese yen for 40 years has been the go-to funding currency for every hedge fund and central bank in the world, because they have the lowest interest rates in the world. And you can borrow from Japan and put it in any other currency in the world and get a positive carry. It's called the carry trade. And then you can leverage that 10 or 20 times through the derivative markets, and you're making 30-35% a year with no risk. If you're compounding money at 30% a year, that means you're doubling your money every 7 years or so. The rule of 72, how you double your money. So if you're on that trajectory, there's no way in hell you're not going to become super wealthy. And with that wealth comes the ability to lobby Washington to make it easier to do this exact same thing, but much bigger. The 2008 crisis, Obama, first leader in history during a global financial crisis, bailed out the creditors. That's never happened ever in history. Usually you bail out the debtors. But instead, Obama wrote a check to the banks. And what did they do with that check? They did the exact same thing all over again, but 10 times bigger. And now we have a much bigger crisis.
Yeah, we lost our home during the 2008 crisis.
You should have been bailed out, not Citibank.
Yeah, I mean, we lost it, and
right? Why weren't you bailed out?
Yeah, we lost.
You're
the
debtor,
everything.
not Citibank. They're
Right.
the creditor. They made the loan a bona fide loan with counterparty risk, as documented in the indenture. They're on the hook, not you.
글로벌 통화 체계의 중심에 있었던 일본 은행이 지금은 디폴트의 벼랑 끝에 서 있습니다. 이 사태는 곧 전 세계적인 경기 침체로 이어질 수 있습니다. 맥스카이저는 법정화폐 시스템의 붕괴, 극심한 인플레이션, 그리고 은행도산 사태가 맞물리며 대규모 경제 붕괴가 다가오고 있다고 경고합니다. 그는 전 세계가 이 위기와 씨름하는 가운데 비트코인 표준으로의 전환이 머지 않았다고 전망합니다. 그는 연준과 각국 중앙은행의 약속이 모두 공허한 말뿐이었다고 주장하며 그 결과 과도한 돈풀기와 부실한 투자 확산이 이어졌다고 지적합니다. 최근의 인플레이션 급등 사태 이후에도 상황은 결코 정상화되지 않을 것이라고 카이저는 말합니다. 그는 미국 경제가 통제 불능 상태에 빠졌으며 부채 위기가 점점 더 심화되고 있다고 경고합니다. 카이저는 앞으로의 시나리오를 초인플레이션 혹은 디플레이션성 대공황 이 두 가지로 제시합니다. 그리고 어느 쪽이든 인류의 전반적인 삶의 질은 급격히 악화될 것이라고 말합니다. 흥미롭게도 그는 정치인들조차 비트코인을 잠재적 해결책의 일부로 논의하기 시작했다는 점에 주목합니다. 이는 비트코인 중심의 금융체계로의 전환이 이미 시작되고 있음을 보여주는 신호라고 그는 설명합니다. 이번 맥스카이저의 최신 인터뷰에 대해 여러분들은 어떻게 생각하시나요? 그리고 그의 비트코인 전망에 대해선 어떤 의견을 갖고 계신가요? 댓글에 남겨주세요.